Hi fellow bombers, I'm Brian from Atomic-Moto and I'm here to do a review of the Tech 7 Enduro boots. The Tech 7 Enduro is the lug sole version of the Tech 7, of course, and that is the most popular off-road boot sold in the world. Now, with so many of them out there, we wanted to properly speak to its unique characteristics, and so we pulled a pair off of the shelf, took them out across 3 separate rides, about 260 miles of riding in lots of different conditions, some slab, some 2-track and fire road, some single track, and then some scouting where we're getting on and off the bike, walking around. And we got a pretty good impression of them. I'll get to that. Let me start with the basics though. Now, this boot retails for $389.95 as of the filming of this video. It comes in sizes 7 all the way up to size 15. It weighs 4.24 pounds for this size 11, and Alpinestars size scale in 11 is a 45.5. And the Tech 7 is made in Thailand. The construction of the Tech 7 is unique compared to other welt sole off-road boots. Let me start and show you what I mean from the bottom of the sole up. Now, this doesn't have a stitched-on sole like, for example, the Alpinestars Tech 8, but it's not a traditional glued-on sole either. I believe that this boot is made with some steps of its assembly process done by something called co-molding or co-injection, where pieces of material are placed in a mold and the material is injected into the mold, and those two things bond together, and that eliminates some of the steps of assembly. And if you look at this toe area right here, you'll see what I mean. This is not glued on. I believe that this is injected because I don't believe that they could press this on with heat and also press it all the way around the side. I believe that that is injected on. In any case, this is a very different way of assembling a boot compared to other bonded sole boots. And some of the materials that are used are different as a consequence of that. The boot has a semi-mechanical hinge. It doesn't have an actual mechanical pivot here. It pivots on a plastic piece on this inner ankle design. And on the outer piece, it has a little bit of a nested hinge here. And I'll flex that so you can see what I'm talking about. And then it has a kind of tongue and groove system here on the back, which Alpinestars uses on several of their models, for example, the Toucan. It has a rubber burn guard here that goes up the side of the boot. 4 buckles. Alpinestars buckles are really nice. They're really simple and easy to use. They've got quite a bit of leverage. That's a good thing. They're a little bit larger, which means they're easier to use with gloves on. They're also a little bit easier to bang into stuff. The inside of the boot has quite a bit of foam in its surface. It is polyethylene foam, which is not like memory foam. It's not that firm density like a memory foam bed or pillow. But there's quite a bit of it. It's pretty thick. Doesn't have a real hard density, but there's quite a bit of it, and that continues all the way down through the front. The fit of the Tech 7 is a little bit narrow in the front of the boot. It's not quite as wide as some other models. It does have a little pop out here, and that little bulge, you can kind of see it on the top, gives it a little bit more volume. So it's almost like a cheater, a narrow fit with a little cheater section so that it accommodates some kind of normal, maybe slightly wide boots. But this is not as wide as an SG10 or a Crossfire TA. As I mentioned, I spent a bunch of time using these out on a motorcycle, 3 separate rides, about 260 miles of riding. Did that because this boot is super popular, and I wanted to understand what things customers like about it. The first thing that jumps out at me is that these boots are kind of plush when you first put them on. They have kind of a soft and squishy feel that is more similar to a snowboard boot, quite frankly, than it is to a typical off-road motorcycle boot. And that's a combination of the softer materials used for the outer shell and the softer PE foam on the inside. And in fact, I put them on, I cinched them all down, walked around a little bit, and I kept cinching them up multiple times through the day, getting them tighter and tighter because they just sort of compressed and formed to me, and I wanted to keep snugging them up so I had good support and good protection against twisting. Second thing I noticed is they're a little bit lighter Not a lot in ounces, but in the distribution of that weight. Most welt sole boots are really bottom heavy. The bottom sole has quite a bit of weight, and it actually is the bulk of the weight of the boot. So they have a little bit of a pendulum feel. These don't. The weight is more evenly distributed throughout the boot. And where that was most noticeable to me is I have a pretty short inseam, and I have a motorcycle with a 38-inch seat height, and I actually have to do this little kind of knack-knack bounce move to get my leg up and over the seat. And with these boots being a little bit lighter, that was quite a bit easier, and I really like that. Now, once I was on the bike, the next thing that pops out at me is that they're more tactile. The soft sole material has more grip, has more purchase on the foot pegs. The top of the boot here is a little bit softer, and then the forefoot of the boot has a little bit more flex, and so those two things gave me a little bit more shifter and brake feedback, which was nice. And then when moving, I could feel up through the foot pegs a little bit more. I just had a little bit more feedback coming up through the bottoms of the soles. Now, an important and common question that we get asked all the time is, are these boots easy to walk in? And the answer is yes for the Tech 7. Now, there's two reasons for that. If you can see here, I walked around a little bit on some lava rock to try and get a good-looking picture. And the sole being softer gave me a lot more grip on that, which was kind of nice. The sole is also a little bit narrow, and so it was a little bit wobbly, a little bit less stable, but that surface is very uneven, and that's not a typical situation when you're walking. The other thing is that the flex of the boot was actually quite nice for walking. You can see that in this little clip I've got. The other important question about any boot, especially this one, is how is the protection? And I have to say that the Tech 7 is a little bit below average compared to other off-road boots when you're talking about protection. Why? Well, first of all, there's quite a bit of give in the forefoot. If you look, this is pretty easy to bend. The entire upper part of the boot has quite a bit of give, and the ankle area is actually not too hard to flex. You can see that I can do that here fairly easy, more easy than some other boots. It's not as easy as an adventure boot. This definitely has quite a bit more protection than an adventure boot, and that's important. I'm going to circle back to that later. But if you're comparing this to other off-road style boots like a Crossfire or an SG12 or a former Predator, many others, the Tech 7 is on the softer side and less protective than those. I really want to single out one thing which you can see pops up a lot in online comments about the Tech 7, and that is the softness of the forefoot. Now, this makes a boot really popular in the showroom, right? Because it has a normal walking motion. You go to walk, you go to step in the boot, and it has a little bit of bend to it. And so it feels nice when you're walking around on a concrete floor with carpeting on it. It feels like a normal shoe. However, frontal impacts, meaning where you're riding along and you clip something that is stationary like a rock or a stump or a log, you clip something with the front of the boot. This does not have a lot of protection for stationary object impacts, frontal impacts. Okay, you can't see, but there's been a lot of takes on this video. It's time for me to bring this one home. The Tech 7 Enduro is a boot that we have some mixed feelings about. It's a great option, but it has to be in the right context. It is an off-road boot, but is way to the softer side of the off-road boot category. And a lot of people who buy this boot and advocate others buying it online really don't have an idea of how it fits or compares to other models. They just know they've tried it on and they think it's really good. And it is good, but it's quite soft. It is one of the softest off-road boots out there. And again, I'm going to show you that this has got quite a bit of flex in the midsole. And if you're a guy that is riding in harder enduro or even normal, tighter trail riding, single track and things like that, where there are stationary objects like rocks, stumps, and logs, and you contact something with the front of your toe on this boot, you're going to wish that you had something with a weld sole. If you're a really precise rider and you really never get knocked offline, then then that, by all means, that's not as much of a concern as long as you know. On the other hand, if you are looking at these as alternatives to, for example, alternatives to adventure boots for adventure guys on big ADV bikes, this is much more protective than just about every ADV boot out there. If you're a dual sporter, this is a great combination. It's way to the protective side, but it's still pretty darn easy to live with, to walk in, to shift, to operate the controls, to get feedback up through the pegs. If you're doing a lot of walking on and off the bike, these are great also. As I mentioned, one of the things that really was cool for me was getting on and off the motorcycle, and this is just a nice improvement over my heavier, more protective, but my heavier welt sole choices. So really what this boot is great for is someone who takes a look at it, compares it to other boots that are stiffer, other boots that are softer, understands where it fits in the context of everything out there, and then says, yeah, this thing is for me. It's kind of a Goldilocks solution. And if that describes you, then that describes these, and we hope you check them out, and we hope you buy them from us. And that's probably a good point for me to wrap up this video. We are Atomic-Moto, www.atomic-moto.com. We are mission focused on finding great gear and matching it up to you, your bike, and your type of riding. We have a great YouTube channel. We'd love it if you click the like on this video and click subscribe for future videos. And of course, as always, we hope to see you not in the office, but out on your bike.